Hi, I'm Joel Searles, and I'm here with Joshua Caldwell, director of Mending the Line. How you doing, Joshua?
Hey, Joel, how you doing? I'm doing good.
Great, great. Thanks for asking. Joshua's done a lot of different feature films, such as Layover, Be Somebody, and Infamous. He's most recently
Infamous.
done Infamous.
Infamous. That's it.
Yes, yes. That's with Paramount, right? You did it for Paramount Pictures?
Infamous was with Vertical, but Be Somebody was through Paramount.
Ah, okay. I knew you did one of them with Paramount.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, you just completed Mending the Line. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Mending the Line is the story of a Marine who's wounded in Afghanistan, and he's sent to a VA clinic in Montana where he meets an older Vietnam vet who teaches him how to fly fish as a way of dealing with his trauma.
Wonderful, wonderful. And does it come out June 9th? Is that correct?
Yeah. So the film will be out in theaters nationwide on June 9th. And it'll be pretty much in every state and every city that's around the country.
That's great. That's great. I've screened the film, and you really did a fine job on it. I was really enjoyed it. Found it therapeutic even watching, and you got some great performances out of your cast.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that was kind of the idea, right? Was to take the audience on a very similar journey to the one that Colter's going on. And so, it being, as a director, I'm really interested in sort of the subjectivity of movies and how, as the director, I could sort of engage the audience with the character in a more direct way than just sort of observational. And so one of the aspects of that with this film was really trying to mimic the audience's engagement with the film to be very similar to how Colter engages with the world around him throughout the film.
That came through, definitely. Sinqua Walls, he was fabulous to see on screen.
Yeah, Sinqua was great. I mean, he brought such a level of commitment to the role, to what is a very challenging character, right? I mean, sort of to try and sort of perform the effects of PTSD is not easy. And so, it's both a physical manifestation, it's a mental manifestation, it's emotional manifestation. And so, he really kind of ran the gamut in this film in terms of what he had to portray. And I think he did a really fantastic job, and really brought Colter to life in a way that, because I've seen the movie now with veterans and watched it with audiences, like they're really connecting to that journey. And I think that's what's most satisfying about having made this movie, that, veterans are coming up to me and saying, thank you for finally making a movie that speaks to my experience. And, and Sinqua's performance is a huge part of that. Obviously, Brian's performance is a huge part of that, as is the rest of the cast. And I think, Harry Matfeld, Wes Studi, Patricia Heaton, all really brought their A game to this film. And I'm incredibly proud of the performances that they gave to this story.
Definitely. You should be. Can you tell us how you got involved with Mending the Line?
Yeah. I'm a fly fisherman, and have sort of experienced the therapeutic effects of fly fishing myself. I'm not, not with any kind of trauma, but just being a creator and a storyteller, you often live in your head, and to be able to sort of go on the river and escape all that for a little bit is very beneficial. And so when this script came across my desk, I really wanted to do it. It was a beautifully written story by Stephen Camelio, who wrote this sort of as a bit of a love letter to his father, who passed away. He was a Vietnam vet, and he passed away due to cancer as a result of Agent Orange experience in Vietnam, exposure in Vietnam. And Stephen found himself sort of, fly fishing through his grief, and decided to write a story about it. And when I read it, I just felt that I was so drawn to it, not only for the aspect of fly fishing, but, also the portrayal of PTSD and the portrayal of fly fishing as a therapeutic endeavor to help with the effects of that. And, as a fly fisherman, you can't help but sort of know about, Words in Quiet Waters, Project Healing Waters and these groups, these veteran groups around the country that are doing this kind of work. But beyond that, you've got groups like Casting for Recovery, which is taking women who survive like breast cancer, right? Like take them fly fishing. Trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter if it's combat or as a result of cancer or the result of losing somebody. And so I just felt very compelled to tell this story, bring Stephen's beautiful writing to the page, and really, make sure that we got the portrayal of everything in this film, whether it was the fly fishing, the military, the veterans groups, the veteran experience post-military, and make sure we got all of that right.
Well, that your time and effort put into it, that does translate to the screen. That's what is up there, and that's it's very inspiring that you found that the fly fishing piece so much of a draw on top of the veterans to not only want to do the film, but I think do the veterans who've served justice and kind of opening some of their eyes to fly fishing. I didn't actually know that myself, being a veteran, that fly fishing was a therapeutic outlet.
Yeah, there's some really great groups out there doing that work, and I think that's that's where I think for me, as much as like we made a movie, right? And I'm a storyteller, I'm not a veteran. I've never seen combat, I am just a storyteller. And so I think that what I hope the movie kind of brings to bigger, a large audience is the idea that this is really happening. We're not making this up. This isn't something that's contrived for the film. There are real groups out there doing the real work, and you're seeing veterans' lives get changed as a result of standing in a river and waving a stick, and I think that's really what's most compelling about this film is that it is a true to life thing. While it's not based on any one true story, Stephen and I found as we started doing research and started exploring and making this film that it was actually based on a lot of different true stories. And people came out of the woodwork to share those stories with us and open themselves up to, telling us what their vulnerabilities were, how much fly fishing has impacted them. And that was a really sort of touching and profound experience for me.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing and for all you've done in the film and for veterans.
Well, thank you. You said you're a veteran?
Yes, I'm a Marine.
Oh, well, obviously, thank you very much for your service. To have the conversations that we've had with these guys and to understand their stories, it just, it really, again, kind of just drilled into me the need to tell an honest and accurate portrayal of the experiences they've gone through as much as you can within a 2-hour movie. And obviously, it pleases me to have veterans like yourself, connect with the film and feel that we did do honor to even a small part of their story.
Absolutely. You're welcome. And thank you for that. What
Yeah, absolutely.
You had mentioned about some of, screening this film with some of the veterans. What interactions did you have with the veteran community, at large in the filming and then afterwards?
Yeah, so we from the get-go wanted to involve as many veterans as we could in the process of making this film. Namely, that started with a partnership with Warriors in Quiet Waters, which is a veteran organization in Bozeman, Montana, and they help post 9/11 combat veterans find peace on the water. So they bring them out to Montana. They give them rods and reels and waders and boots, all donated, and they take them fishing. And I got to sort of talk to a number of veterans that were part of that organization to hear their story, to understand that process. And that's really where sort of our journey with this started and became very much like the desire to connect with the emotional truth of what these guys have experienced, fly fishing. For example, one of them told us, when we went out fishing with him, he said, the first time I caught and held a fish, I cried. Like I had this well of emotion coming. He's like, I don't know where that came from. I'm not a crier, but I just had this profound emotional wave overcome me when I held that fish. And he said that as he let the fish go, he felt a profound sort of a letting go of everything that he had held on to at that moment. And, you know, you hear that and you go, that's got to be in the film, right? And so we tried to, as much as we could, replicate that with Sinqua's experience. And so, you know, that was a huge part of it. We partnered with the U.S. the U.S. Marine Corps Entertainment Liaison Office, which is much like in the way that Top Gun worked with the Navy. We worked with the Marines. And what that gave us was not only access to technical advisors who helped us with every step of the way, making sure that we were telling an accurate story. And I know with you Marines, like there's very particular things that are very different from other branches. So we wanted to make sure we got that right. And they also allowed us, you know, we're a small indie film, you know, we're not a massive budget movie. And they allowed us to shoot our opening sequence at Camp Pendleton, where they have a Afghanistan sort of simulator set where they do training, and they allowed us to use that set. They provided all the vehicles, all the Marines, all the technical advisors, and all that was provided at no charge to us. And so that was had a significant impact on the ability for us to tell this story and tell it in an engaging and an accurate way. And then throughout sort of the rest of it, we connected with the VA in order to make sure that we had as accurate a portrayal as the process as we could. Again, within the limitations of a film, it's not a documentary about this, you know, and so we had to kind of condense it down, but, you know, we tried to be as accurate as we could. And then even on, you know, even on the both the cast and the crew side, we tried to involve as many veterans as we could. So most of the veterans in that group scene, in the group therapy scene, those are almost all veterans. We had a lot of veterans as extras. Obviously, Wes Studi is a Vietnam veteran. And so we were really fortunate to just, you know, sort of open the doors to inviting the veteran community to participate as much as possible. And, you know, all the way down to, not to spoil it, but the final scene in the film that was shot at the Warriors of Quiet Waters Ranch in Bozeman, Montana. And almost all of the men and women you see in that final scene are veterans who were actually in Montana on a fishing experience with the group. So, you know, we're thankful for people being willing to participate in the film that way.
Definitely. No, it's great you're able to involve so many of them. And I'm sure the veterans, you know, they get their Hollywood chance. They get their 15 minutes of fame or 15 seconds to get a smile on camera or something.
Yeah, exactly. And why not? Right. You know, like this is what this movie's about. And, you know, the sort of the way that some of them would react, you know, like Saul Martinez, who's the gentleman, the double amputee in the group therapy scene. It was funny because he's an actor, he's a veteran, he's a fly fisherman, and you know, he came in and he's like, "What do you want me to do?" I'm like, "Just tell your story, man. I'm not gonna make that up. Like, just tell your story, you know." And so he did, and that's what ended up in the final movie, you know. And so, you know, to me, I can't make up the experience of what you guys have been through, whether even if it's not in combat, you know, just the experience of being a Marine. Anything I put in that's from my perspective is made up, right? And so to have the real experience and to have the real feedback is so much more meaningful to telling an accurate story. I have to say, like, so many of the vets we talked to told me that we cannot watch military movies. Like, we can't get into it. We see too many of the mistakes and all that stuff. And I just took that as a challenge. I said, okay, I'm going to make a military themed movie that you can actually sit down and watch. And maybe they're just, you know, being nice, but most of the ones that I talked to that later watched the movie said that that's a movie that they can get behind and that they can watch.
Well, they're correct. And it's not just being nice. I wouldn't have been interested in the interview if I hadn't watched the film and enjoyed it. I mean, if it was some C-rate Roger Corman-esque, you know,
money grab type of deal.
Yeah, I'd have been like, okay, well, I wish you the best and, you know, carry on and stuff. But no, the film, you could tell it had real Marine advisors on it. You could tell it had the real Marine equipment and the gun trucks and the things that they said and the things that they did. I didn't catch anything that threw me. Like, I can't do my memory of watching the film, and there's many of them I watched where you're like, okay, people don't carry their weapon that way, and that's not how Marines talk. That's not even how soldiers talk. I'm like, what is that? The voices of the characters were in sync with what veterans that I know. So, and the dialogue was too. So it was as close as you can be.
Yeah.
And So
That's great to hear. I mean, it's nice when you can go to somebody in the Marines, right? Who you can give them a script and you can say, these are the story points we need to hit. How do we do it in Marine speak, right? How do we, and then he goes, okay, hang on a second. And then he, flips it all over, and all of a sudden, then you've got this really accurate, dialogue or accurate, whatever it is. And so, I live for that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is so exciting to me because, if you can get it right, and I just think it adds to the authenticity of the film at the end of the day.
100%, 100%. What creative inspirations drove your vision for the film?
That's a good question. I mean, I, for the most part, really just kind of looked into myself and what I really wanted to accomplish. I mean, there's obviously a number of military movies out there. There's a number, River Runs Through It is obviously, a fly fishing inspiration. But, the challenge with this film is there weren't really a lot of films like it, certainly in content. Obviously, the drama, the nature of the relationship between Brian and Sinqua, that exists in other movies. But what I really wanted to do, and the way I really approached it, was from, kind of a subjective experience, as I might have mentioned before. And this idea that I wanted to treat the audience to Colter's journey. And I wanted to almost feel like you were standing right next to him throughout it. So, the opening sequence, you are thrown into the chaos of a military firefight. It's a single take. There's no cuts, so you don't get any kind of like release of tension, right? You're sort of, and then it's done, and it's just this like, what happened, right? And then you go to this really placid, genteel, view of the river where you have Ike casting, and we really wanted to. My DP and I, Eve Cohen, really wanted to mimic Colter's experience. So the first time Colter sees Montana, he sees it in the back of a van. Right. You don't see grand sweeping views of Livingston. You see it through a window that's partially cut off, because that's how Colter is seeing it. And it is not until Colter first sees the river that the world then opens up to him. And so, we just wanted to really treat the audience to a similar sense, kind of throw them into the chaos of it that they need to recover from, and then use the rest of that movie to sort of like, take them through that journey of recovery. And so that's where it really started from. And then I have my own kind of like aesthetic and my own approach to things that I like to use, and have kind of tried to start moving away from referencing other filmmakers in my own work. I'd rather kind of focus on doing my own thing. So I'm sure people can make comparisons, but, I think we often talked about, the simplicity of a lot of like Clint Eastwood's films, right? His dramas, I think speaks a lot to this sort of this type of film. And, that's kind of where we really came from, like really focusing on the relationships, focusing on the story, and trying to bring out the beauty of not just the relationships between all the characters, but also the beauty of Montana.
Thank you for that. Very, very prevalent in your film, the simplicity of it. It's interesting you reference Eastwood. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. So
yeah. With this movie, it's so based on, it's not plot twists. We're not trying to trick you. We're not trying to like, get a gotcha or tell some like really like, 90-minute quick thing in and out type of film. This is a film that really was designed to be lived in. You were designed to experience the movie as the characters experience it. And I think that's what we accomplished with it.
Definitely. Do you have any fun stories from the project? We've had a lot of serious talk here. So
yeah. Well, it was one of the biggest challenges to the film was the fact that we basically, we were in Montana. We're in the middle of a drought, right? We shot in August of 2021. I mean, there's barely any water and no rain. And we had completed 3 days of photography, and it was like a lot of the Lucy stuff, right? And then we're staring down the next week, and we just see out of nowhere 5 days of solid rain. And the problem with that is all of those days were where we were scheduled to shoot all of the river fishing scenes. And basically, I went to the producers and I said, listen, like as a fly fisherman, I can tell you like fishing in the rain is epic and definitely something in real life you would go do. but we cannot have all of our fishing scenes in this movie take place in the rain. That's just not going to work. Like, but because you got to shoot them all at once. And so that set off a really crazy, sort of rescheduling of like the entire movie on the fly in order to sort of have some set, because it's like, yeah, normally you got cover sets and like you're able to shift, and we were able to do some of that, but like, again, we had 8 weeks of like zero rain, and all of a sudden this rain, and then basically it rained for a week. And then the following week it was sunny again and no more rain for like another 8 weeks. It was like, it was nuts. And then, the other thing that's really crazy about, with the fishing stuff, right? Like one of the things about the movie is that, a river runs through it. Most of the time, pretty much all the time, the fish that you see are dead. Right? They're pull them out of the creel and the fish are dead. And you can go to the supermarket if you need to get those trout. But because our film and most anglers today practice catch and release, we had to basically, we needed live fish. And so our fish biologist, a guy named Joe Urbani, like he was the one who was providing the fish every day. And we were getting ready to shoot the montage scene. And we were at a place called Depew Spring Creek. And we had been shooting sort of the scene where Lucy and Colter arrive. And then, they have lunch. We shot that stuff first. And then I'm hearing over the radio, hey, we're not catching any fish. We don't have any fish for the fishing montage. And I had been fishing this creek the day before on my day off, and I had caught 2 really, really nice brown trout, big brown trout. And I go, don't worry, guys, I know where to catch the fish. Like, I'll take care of it. So we wrap for lunch. I hop in my car. I zoom over to this spot that I know where I just caught these brown, and I proceed to fish. And I catch 2 of the smallest fish you've ever seen in your life. And certainly that exist in that river. And I said, well, you know what? I don't care. These fish are going in the movie. And that small fish is the fish that Sinqua releases during the montage that everybody, gets a laugh every time. And so I'd like to say that was my attempt at having a big ego and the idea that I'm going to go catch all these big fish. And instead I catch the smallest fish that's featured in the movie.
That's funny. It's very funny.
Yeah, it was a good time. Everybody got a good laugh out of it.
Some humble pie in the form of a small fish.
You know what? As a fisherman, you're used to it. You go out and you think you're going to do well, and all you catch are these tiny little fish. But that's fishing, really, at the end of the day.
It's true. It's true. Been fishing before, and I think I've only caught little teeny fish. Shucks.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
We're all looking for the big swordfish or the
or at least a big trout, but yeah. I think at the end of the day, what's great is we didn't, you can't plan the fish you're going to catch. Right. And so what we were gifted in that was a really compelling montage instead of just a bunch of shots of a bunch of different, grip and grins of the same size trout. Like we got to put together a real story, in that 2-minute montage. And so I think that was sort of the fishing gods were giving me that gift as opposed to the gift of a bruiser brown trout.
Well, hopefully they'll shine on you next time for that bruiser brown trout.
I hope so.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
What has impacted you the most from your involvement with Mending the Line?
I think that at the end of the day, what impacts me so much is getting to see the film with veterans and hearing them, their response to the film, and in hearing that, like I mentioned before, that we really got it right, that we really connected with it, that, when you have a veteran come up after a screening and say, thank you for finally telling a story that speaks to my experience, and they've got tears in your eyes, like it can't help but impact you emotionally. And so what I've always sort of thought of this film is, I think it's great that we made a movie. I'm very proud of the movie, but it's just a movie, right? What's happening in this, what's happening in the world and throughout this country is the movie is happening in real life. And I think the more we can bring awareness to veterans issues and to sort of the post-military life transition, and highlight sort of the need for some kind of support, around these guys and these men and women who have done so much and sacrificed so much for this country, and come back to a country that's, alienating and individualistic and divided. And I think that, the fact that this is happening in real life, that this work is being done by a number of different organizations is incredibly important to highlight. And I think doing so is sort of what I'm most proud of with the film.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And it's very, it's very impactful in itself. And it's, I mean, had I seen it in person, I'd come up and talk to you too after the screening, but we're here now. So
Yeah.
It's great to hear. I'm sure my audience members and those that We Are the Mighty will want to hear that as well. Thank you, Joshua, for coming on the show. It's great to speak with you and great to hear your story. Everyone go check out Mending the Line. It's in the theaters this June 9th, so 3 days from now. Check it out. It's worth the watch, and it's a wonderful film. So have a great day.